We're ready, Kelly.
All right, and you're going to go ahead and mute everybody else, right? All right, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Maine State Bar Association's Bar Talk this February 8th of 2021. Thank you all for being here. We've got a good crowd coming out because we've got some interesting things to talk about today. So with us today as our guest speakers is Justin Andrus, who's the Interim Executive Director for MCILS. And Frank Bishop is also here. Frank is one of the governors on the MSBA Board of Governors. He is the president-elect, so he will be sitting in my seat next year. And right now he is chairing up the ad hoc MCILS committee that the Bar Association has put together. And that's made up of Board of Governor members. And the intent of that committee is to try as much as possible, get a handle on the situation, understand the situation, and as necessary, make recommendations to the Board of Governors as to what the association should be or should not be doing on this very important issue. And so Justin and Frank are here today to share what's going on in the world, in the MCILS world from their perspective. We do welcome a robust conversation on these topics. The way to do that, just to kind of keep it orderly, is through the chat function. And the chat button is down at the bottom of your screen. Click on that and you can choose who. You've got 4 choices of people to send your questions to. 3 of those choices will result in your question potentially going unheard. Make sure you choose Angela. Send your questions to Angela. She will interject them as appropriate into the flow of conversation. And I think that's all I have to say to start things out. So let's go ahead and turn things over to Justin. Thank you so much for being here with us this morning, Justin.
I'm going to, real quick, I'm going to mute everybody and then you're going to have to unmute yourself, Justin.
I successfully unmuted myself.
You're good.
All right. Thank you, Kelly and Angela and Frank, for the opportunity to come this morning and talk to everybody. I see on the list of folks, many people who I know and a few who I don't. And so for those of you who don't know me, I am Justin Andrus. Hi, Thad. I have assumed the role of Interim Executive Director at MCILS effective January 19th. So I haven't been here very long. But I have dived in. I am learning quickly. I am hoping that you all will have insightful questions for me, but I hope you will also be patient with me if I have to tell you I need to go get an answer. Just so you know my background a little bit, I've been licensed to practice since 2002. I served a year before that at the Cumberland Legal Aid Clinic. I've been involved in providing legal services to indigent folk since June of 2001, and I have done that consistently throughout my career until 2019 and 2020 when I worked at the Board of Overseers of the Bar. So I have a long background in this, even though I have a short tenure in this role. As probably most of you know, MCILS is responsible for providing attorneys to folks who are entitled to counsel but cannot afford counsel everywhere in the state except in the probate courts. And so, and I suppose I should be saying that when I say that, they consider the tribal courts to be their own entity. So we also don't provide counsel there, even though it's physically located in the state. That includes stuff like criminal matters, which is what you probably anticipate, but also child protective cases, de facto parenthood cases, all sorts of appeals, mental health work. It's a really broad ambit, and we serve a broad cross-section of individuals, and we do that with a broad cross-section of lawyers. We have approximately 600 lawyers in the state of Maine who have been qualified, been certified to represent the individuals to whom we provide services. There's been lots of press, lots of information, lots of rumor and innuendo about things that have happened at MCILS. So for those of you who are interested but haven't yet seen it, there are reports that have called into question some of the historical practices of the organization. One was from the Sixth Amendment Center, more recently from the State of Maine's Office of Program Evaluation, OPEGA. And so we're working hard to demonstrate that, in fact, our lawyers are diligent, competent, honest, ethical, and capable, and they are all of those things, and that they've been providing and continue to provide excellent service to the people they're called upon to serve, and yet to simultaneously address some of the questions about the degree of oversight that allows us to demonstrate that excellence, and also to improve the quality of our operations. We've been working closely and getting a lot of support from the legislature, from the Office of the Governor, from our commission, and making changes. Very excited that last week the Judiciary Committee heard our need for increased staffing, for example, and agreed that we should be provided with additional staff. You should know that before I got here, the organization consisted internally of 3 individuals, all of whom were working well beyond what could reasonably be expected of them. We have Lori Wing, who does the administrative work. We have Lynn Nash, who is our accounting technician, Ellie Maciag, who is our deputy director, and they have put in yeoman service to keep the train on the tracks. I want to recognize all of them, and really excited and thankful about and to the Judiciary Committee for hearing our needs and agreeing we need to get some more people in. They've put that in our supplemental budget, and now I'm looking up the food chain to see that supported and to get us the people that we need to do the job we're called on to do. I could get into the weeds, but if people have questions for me, I think the best thing to do is to bring them to me, and I'd like the opportunity to address them for you.
So I'll be very brief, because I think we're a lot more interested in question and answers with Justin than with me. But I just want to let our members know that the Board of Governors has formed an ad hoc MCILS working group. It's made up of myself, Jack Tebbets, Zach McNally, Ezra Willie, Christine Hanley. And so we have tasked ourselves with attending all the MCILS meetings, getting up to speed on the 6th Amendment report and the OPEGA report, and reaching out to interested parties to see what, if anything, the MSBA can do to support MCILS and any potential reform. So members out there, if you have ideas, questions, etc., we want to hear from you. You can contact me directly or Angela. One idea that I'm interested in would be some kind of symposium on indigent legal services, gathering together practitioners and all the interested parties here in Maine. What I have in mind would be a full day or 2-day type of gathering for an exchange of ideas. So if you have ideas in particular about a symposium like that, it's something I would like to do in the first quarter of this year, so in the next couple of months. And so I'm all ears about ideas. So from there, do we have any questions yet, Kelly?
Angela will be the one who will be fielding the questions.
No.
So Justin, if you don't mind, can I throw a question at you?
Yeah, please.
I'm curious about LD 348, an act to give oversight powers to the MCILS, because as I read you're familiar with this bill. As I read the bill, it's a little bit ambiguous about whether this bill is intended to provide to replace the authority of the executive director to determine if someone should be removed from the roster, or if it's intended to give the commission additional authority to the executive director, and whether you know if that's the intention, or if you have any thoughts about that.
So I did not speak with the representative as that bill was drafted, and so I can't speak to what the intent in drafting was, but I can address these issues I think it was working to overcome, in part because we discussed them in Judiciary last week. In my view, most commission functions should be the day-to-day purview of the executive director or director's designee, in that the commission itself should be available to serve as an appellate body, which is what many of the conversations I've had have suggested. I think that the the executive director's authority needs to be more transparent We need to have some standards that address issues about what sorts of things will result in what sorts of action. It also needs to be broader. I'll come back to that in a second. It also needs to be broader in that the current authority of the commission is effectively limited to rostering or derostering somebody. It is my absolute belief that all or nearly all of our attorneys are not just honest, but are accurate and thus not wasteful in billing. But we do have public trust of the money that is given to us to pay our contracted attorneys. And so we need to have a system in place that allows us to investigate and confirm that a perceived problem isn't a problem, or to address it. And so what I'd like to see evolve, and I may offer language formally or just discuss it, we'll see how that shakes out, but what I'd like to see evolve is statutory authority to perform the function that we're expected to perform. So the 6AC report, the PEGA report, my impression of state government, I don't want to speak for any particular individual, but the impression that I've received is that there's an expectation that we be able to confirm that there isn't waste and there certainly isn't fraud. And that needs to go in there. So we asked for 2 staff people from the floor at Judiciary, and to my shock and joy, got that support. One of those people would be involved in making sure that the accounting was proper. Another thing we're going to be doing on that front this afternoon is a meeting of the financial subcommittee. And at that meeting, we're going to be discussing proposed billing standards and information gathering standards for the attorneys to ensure that the job is possible to do. I know that's a little apart from what you actually asked, but it goes to where what we're trying to get to as an organization.
So would LD 348 ultimately be the vehicle for statutory changes or a different bill?
That I can't answer. It certainly could be. As amended, or as I propose to amend it. I am a babe in the woods when it comes to the actual statutory process. So I'm agnostic to the vehicle as long as we get to where we want to go. And then when we look to the PEGA report, it focused almost exclusively on financial stuff, and so I think it's really important we talk about quality of service stuff as well. But I understand that before government is going to be willing to further fund the organization, I need to be able to demonstrate that we're not wasting money, and we're not wasting the money. There may be issues here and there that we need to tidy up. We're taking those steps, but our attorneys are hardworking and they're honest. And when we catch a small billing mistake, they correct them. So can I roll from there to quality of service stuff?
Absolutely.
So the Sixth Amendment Center's report, which is coming up on having been published approximately 2 years ago, brought to the fore a host of other issues, attorney caseload issues, hours worked in a day issues, week issues, year issues. Now there were some issues with their math. When you look at the PEGA report, what it says is take the 6AC numbers with a grain of salt, but the issues it identified are real and valid. And so, I expect that over the coming months, we'll be moving from this financial stuff, which we're triaging, into really working on substantive provision of service issues. We need to improve training. We need to figure out training during the COVID era. We need to make sure that in an era that was seeing fewer and fewer trials, even before COVID, that people are getting the opportunity to learn what they need to learn to be effective trial lawyers. Most cases settle, civil cases settle, criminal cases settle, but cases can only settle effectively if everybody's attorney is fully prepared to try the case, and not only is not negotiating from a position of fear, but also coming from a place where they've assessed what the best trial outcome or likely trial outcome is going to be. So we really need to work on that. We also need to work on ensuring that we are properly evaluating our attorneys. So there are, as the PEGA report recognized, there are a number of statutory charges that MCILS hasn't yet accomplished. And I am here in my very plain office working on elements to start filling in those gaps, but we need to have a feedback system that's more robust than it is. We need to have a skills identification schema, and we need to have the ability to identify people who need mentoring and provide it, education and provide it. And that spirit needs to be wherever possible, which is going to be almost all the time, in the spirit of promoting our attorneys and allowing them to become even better attorneys than there are. I'm not talking about quasi-disciplinary sort of stuff. So that's going to be the next round of changes that people should expect to see as we implement the rules that haven't been implemented, and as we begin to address the additional issues identified by the 6AC and the OPEGA report. The dreaded dead air. Angela, anybody have anything they'd like to know? All right.
Really? This is a very quiet, unusually quiet group of lawyers if nobody has questions on this topic.
I'm happy to ask another question, Justin.
Sure.
A lot of the members that we talk to or hear from were very curious about the Kennebec pilot program. And I know that it hasn't been funded at this time.
Right.
But if you could just, inform our members about where that proposal came from, kind of the status of it right now, and maybe thinking a year into the future, like what you would envision in terms of a pilot program, if any.
So if you read the Sixth Amendment Center report and you look at the history of public defense systems nationwide, there is a strong positive argument for the resources, structures, support, training, briefing that's available through an organized public defender office, which may be possible to accomplish in some areas, maybe all areas, maybe not, in a manner that's also cost efficient. And so that pilot program was designed to explore that possibility. It is DOA at the moment, and not from the commission's perspective necessarily. It was the commission's budget that presented that, but it has been communicated effectively that it's not going to be funded unless we address the other issues that are going on. So I can't look a year down the road and tell you where that's going to be. I can tell you that we made allies that I didn't know we were going to make as quickly as we did, as demonstrated in the Judiciary Committee last week. I also don't know and can't speak to the extent to which the entire raft of cases that is in a certain court would be served through that office or outside that office. There are 70 people on this call. My screen shows me 6. One of them is Commissioner Cummins, who has a long and storied history with working to implement formalized indigent and public defense structures in his past. And he has a lot of information and a lot of, brings a lot of advocacy on that front to the conversation. If he has something to add, I don't know if there's the opportunity to do that. But in terms of what happens with it, I don't know where we're going to go with it, in part because I don't know what the funding is going to look like. I do think whatever happens, that my role needs to evolve into something more akin to a chief public defender's role, whether it remains my role or not. When I mean my role, I mean the desk I'm sitting at. And that whether the line attorneys are contractors or employees, and if they're employees, whether they're working in a centralized office or in a model similar to what's happening now, we should be doing a better job of mentoring, of communicating with each other, with supporting each other in the practice and in life, in terms of helping people be well to practice. We should have information that we can share. There should be brief banks, deposition banks, transcript banks. There are issues of copyright there that we have to address before I can happen. All of that structure that could come with the pilot program in Kennebec County, the good things that come with it should be implemented, whether or not there's ultimately a true in-house public defender entity in any given jurisdiction.
Justin, I have a question.
Mhm.
The 2 new positions, was this in addition to the new positions judiciary supported last session, or the same ones they unsuccessfully tried to get last time.
Slightly modified from the 2 from last time, but they're the 2 from last time. Judiciary, as I recall, split last time over whether it should be 2 or more than 2. And then there was, then obviously it didn't happen. So it would be 1 attorney position and 1 staff position that I think should be a paralegal type skilled person. But it is those 2 positions. And I started to say earlier who was in-house when I went here. I want to also recognize that we have the 8 screeners who are in the field. Reports have recognized that there's potential for conflict there. I don't know how that goes. Those individuals are also obviously out there doing the work and keeping the organization running. I apologize for not noting that earlier.
Justin, what's the time frame for bringing these new positions on board?
Assuming that the supplemental budget goes through the rest of the way with them, the budget numbers I was seeing yesterday are assuming a March hire. Well, whether we can find
March. Yeah.
I'm sorry?
March, you said.
Yeah. We still need support because that's got to get the rest of the way through the budget process before it's a sure thing, but we need them and I'm prepared to help spec them out and make recommendations for hiring immediately. We need the help.
Justin, thank you so much. Really appreciate that overview. Everyone who is here, Justin has expressed his willingness to engage in these conversations. So please do reach out to him directly to continue these conversations. Please take Frank up on his invitation of offering your feedback on what position the association should take when it comes to future changes or pending legislation. I'm going to go ahead and with thanks to both Justin and Frank, move on through our agenda so we can wrap up by the 11:30 hour. Angela, over to you for, well, I guess I'm in charge of the next line item. There's not much to report. We don't have a bunch of changing pandemic management orders, which is just fine. Keep an eye out for admin week coming up. Angela.
Thanks, Kelly. So just a reminder to everybody, there will be no bar talk next Monday. That is a holiday, and the Bar Association will be closed that day. You'll be able to log in, but you'll be here all by yourself. And then another reminder, judicial evaluation surveys will be going out at the beginning of March. And we'll be sending you an update prior to then to let you know all the judges that are being evaluated. There are 17 of them. Please, please, please take the time to provide your input, good and bad. We don't want to just hear bad. We want to hear how great they are as well. So please make sure you evaluate those judges that you've had experience with in the last 6 years or so. And then on the 22nd, we'll have Rachel Oken, who many of you probably know as Rachel DeScheitner. She's the chair of our legislative committee, and she'll be on in a couple of weeks.
All right, thanks, Angela. We've added a couple of new categories here to our standing agenda. On the practice tip, we have asked all of our members, all of you, to offer up any tips that you might have that make your practice of law a little bit better, smoother, easier. And so here's what I've got to offer, which is this is an app for the iPhone, for the Android, called Scanner Pro, because now I can't just hand my handwritten notes to my assistant to scan into our system. This is great, though. You go to the app, you hold it over your piece of paper, it automatically finds the edges, takes a snapshot of it, turns it into a PDF, and with one button, I can send it off to my assistant. So if that's something that you have a need for, it's a sweet little app. Wellness tip. Remember, sitting still is a good way to get older faster. So if you have a standing desk or a movable desk, move it up and down over the course of the day. Sometimes I kneel at my desk just to change things up, get one of those bouncy balls. Don't just sit there. And then I have gratitude for the longer days as the sun is entering our lives a little bit more.
Kelly, we had a comment that the Scanner Pro app is also available on the iOS, and it is indeed great.
Sweet. So, I'm not the only one.
Gonna have to check it out.
And please, if you have those practice tips, send them in. And we'll even invite you on to Bar Talk for your little moment of glory to share your practice tip if you'd like to send something in. So, hey, thank you everybody for being here with us today on this beautiful Monday. I hope you all have a great week, and we will see you in 2 weeks. Have a great day.